Hello and welcome to Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast for all your Columbo needs. I am Rich Nocella and I'm here with my sister.
Adrian Nocella.
And the episode we're going to talk about today is a real favorite of mine, Any Old Port in a Storm, 1973, starring Donald Pleasance as the fastidious murderer Adrian Carcini, Gary Conway as his victim half-brother Enrico Giuseppe Carcini, known as Rick, Vito Scotti in his first Columbo appearance as a maitre d', and multiple Tony Award-winning Julie Harris as Adrian's secretary and Fate Worse Than Prison.
It's so sad.
It really is.
This episode's like, oh, women. Or like, I don't know, he called her an iron lady. Anyway, we'll get to it.
We'll certainly get to it.
This guy hates commitment is all I'm saying.
Unless it's to wine, he
Yes.
absolutely does not. The episode starts at 19 and a half minutes BC before Columbo, and it starts with a focus on 4 wine glasses held aloft with a shaft of light coming through them, and a very pompous toast from Adrian Carson, who briefly reviews a history of their wine and family's wine coming from Italy to California. It's very superior wine. The people he's toasting are wine connoisseurs and experts, and we see already that Adrian Carcini is about the love of the wine and the prestige rather than the money. Because the wine they're all sharing would sell at a very high price, but it is a limited amount. It's something that Adrian really only wants to give to his friends instead of selling. So right off the bat, we kind of know where Adrian's head is at.
It's in wine and not in finances.
Correct.
Okay. Also, just to clarify, I don't want any listener to be confused, but I am Adrian Nocella, and this is Adrian Carcini, and it's spelled the boy way, and I spell my name the girl way.
Yes, the British male way of Adrian is Adrian Carcini.
Yes, so don't get it confused. Me and Rich are fine. I didn't murder him.
She did not smack me on the head with a best wine trophy.
No.
And stick me in a wine cellar.
I don't know too much about wine, but I do know that I don't have a way to finish that sentence.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So Carcini steps out of the room, leaving his 3 guests in there to go get a claret that is for sale, but very expensive, when his brother Rick surprises him by already being in his office. Now, Rick, the younger half-brother, is getting married again tomorrow in Acapulco, but he doesn't have the money to do it. So it's important to note at this point that their father was an Italian man who put together all this vineyard and created this spectacular wine, and that their mothers were different.
Well, Well, it's a little important in this respect. His first wife must have been a hedgehog, because Donald Pleasance looks so different to Rick Cassini, who is, it's not Burt Convoy. What's his name?
Gary Conway.
Gary Conway.
Yes.
They look entirely different. Gary Conway is like an Adonis, and Donald Pleasance, who I love from the Halloween movies, he's only the best, but he does look like an actual hedgehog. So first wife, second wife, that's why it's important.
Yeah, I would say, I guess in explaining casting, it's important. But other than that, not so much to the plot. But yes, Gary Conway is the most 29-year-old looking 37-year-old actor.
I never know. So far. But I never know with the 70s, because I don't know. This guy could have been 26 because everyone looks so much older.
Yes.
You know, so he could be 37 playing 29, or he could be 22 playing 29.
Playing 29, exactly.
And looking 40.
Any of that's possible. If we learned anything from Roddy McDowall in Short Fuse, is that anything is possible. So when their father passed away, Rick inherited the vineyard and Adrian inherited the money. But we find out in this scene, and that's something that I will say too, again with Columbo, as I watch these, I'm very impressed by how much backstory they give that is reasonable. It doesn't ever feel like an exposition dump, but they do give you a lot of information in each scene.
Our father was a good man, a good Italian. He provided the wine. My mother was English. She provided the breeding. Your mother, on the other hand, appears to have been responsible for all the coarser sides of your nature.
I'll overlook that remark.
The brother Rick is fed up with having to keep going to Adrian for money, and Adrian has burned through almost all of the money.
Right. There's not much left to distribute.
So Rick is going to sell the vineyard because it is his property.
Right.
And he let Adrian run it because Rick was busy being a playboy. But now he's a playboy who's run out of money and has yet another beautiful wife that he wants to take care of financially.
Right.
And that's how he sees is the only way to do it. And he's not only selling it, he's selling it to the Marino brothers.
Who make 69-cent bottle of swill, right?
69 cents a gallon mouthwash.
Yeah,
is what they make. They don't make wine. Essentially, the exchange amounts to, and there's nothing you can do about it. And Adrian says, well, you're wrong about that. And he picks up a trophy for best wine or something and hits Rick on the head with it, knocking him unconscious. He's knocked out, but not dead. And so after Carsini knocks out the other Carsini, he goes back to his guests. But on the way, we're introduced to Karen, his receptionist. And she comes in to talk about last-minute arrangements for their trip to New York for a wine auction. But he has to hustle her out. He doesn't want her going back into the office to see Rick's unconscious body. Mm-hmm. So he says, you know what, let's make it a week. Let's expand this trip. They were just going to go for the auction. Let's make it a whole week. And that basically gets her out of the way to plan because she's an excellent planner.
Right.
So while she's doing that, Adrian then goes back into where his guests are. And this all takes place over the course of just 3, maybe 4 minutes tops. It's very quick. But they're going to decant this very expensive wine. And Adrian's hands are slightly shaky, so he gives one of his guests the honor of decanting that wine. And at that point, his guests confirm what Adrian had suspected all along, is that they're going to make him Man of the Year of Wine, whatever that is.
Of the society.
Yes.
That's the name of their wine club.
The Society of Wine.
Wine.
So when his guests leave, Adrian then drags his brother into a secret passage from the office, which takes him to the wine cellar and ties him up. And it's interesting. It's clear he's alive. Like they focus in on his chest breathing. Like they want us, the audience, to know that Rick was not killed by the blow to the head, that he is still alive and that he's being hogtied by his brother.
It's awful. And then also, how cool is it that he had a secret passageway to his wine cellar in his office?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of neat because that means that had to have been built before that was an office. Like there was the wine cellar. Like I don't think that he.
True.
Because it was kind of crypt-like. It looked like it was supposed to be like an old, pre-existing yeah, like almost like a small castle. I don't know. I think they tried to incorporate a lot of things into this episode.
Like the cast of not the cast of Monte Cristo, the cast of
the cask of the Amontillado. Yes, the cask of the Amontillado. Yes, and they mentioned that by name when Columbo.
Yes, so that's probably why.
Yeah, they want to make it look a little bit more like that. And not only does he tie him up and leave him in the wine cellar, Adrian also turns off the ventilator and the air conditioning. He then goes outside and swaps his own car with Rick's car. So Rick's car is in the garage, basically hidden from view. He wants to make it look as though Rick may have stopped by to visit, but then he left to go scuba diving.
Yes.
Because that's what he was going to do. That was the plan.
Yeah, that was the plan.
Scuba diving. We now cut to Adrian and Karen in first class, flying first class with the other guests from earlier in the episode. They're all going to the same auction, and I guess they're all from California and flying out to New York.
And it's all the wine connoisseurs.
Yes.
And Adrian and Karen and an organist around a spiral staircase on an American Airlines flight. So did they have double-decker?
Yes.
They must have. They had double-decker even in first class. I'm assuming it's first class. Yeah. They had a spiral staircase.
because they wouldn't have had room for a longer one. So the spiral staircase makes sense if you're going to have another flight to get to. But yeah, that was I don't know. Obviously, I don't know enough about planes to know if that was a Boeing or if that was, what kind of, if it was a 747. I don't know enough about that. But I do know that they did have first class that had more than one story that you can get to.
That's cool.
Like a lounge or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So Karen and Adrian are sitting in the seats while the other guests are drinking wine by the organist.
Right.
And so Adrian's telling Karen, write a note to my brother, letting him know that I'm going to be man of the wine of the year. By the way, write a check for $5,000 for a wedding present for them, which is very generous since he knows it wasn't going to be cashed anyway.
You could give somebody $1 million.
Yeah.
If you're just going to tear it up at some point.
If you know it's just going to be torn because they're dead, right?
But the fake offering in today's money is just about $35,000.
There we go. So $35,000 as a fake wedding gift.
Yes.
Which, by the way, that was smart of him. He did what a lot of modern killers make a mistake on, which is they're not supposed to know the person's dead. So instead of not texting, it would be the equivalent of saying, hey, honey, are you okay? I haven't heard from you a bit, when you know damn well that they're dead because you killed them.
Right.
So that was, again, just kind of showing how he's thinking of everything or trying to. And then a little bit of dark humor. He then sips the wine they had in first class and he gives it a disapproving look. So it's like, what is this? First class wine is garbage. So now they're at the auction and it's kind of the tasting ceremony and everyone's surrounding Adrian Corsini and he's showing off his sensitive palate by identifying all kinds of things that would be probably impossible to really identify from just sipping wine. And then he lets on that it was a trick, that he peeked at the label, which is funny because Columbo does that to him later in the episode.
Yes, but he does it in you know what I have to say about him as a killer? I know that he's referred to as pompous and I know he's supposed to be pretentious, but there's something that he's like, maybe because he's so affable, he's likable.
He is. He's endearing.
Endearing is a good word.
Yeah,
yes.
He's endearing, but I mean, I can't say cold-blooded. I guess we'll get to that when we do the sympathy meter. But
I'm talking about his
just to hang around him.
Destroying your brother like that aside, just his personality. You know what I mean? If you're just comparing him to Suitable for Framing, or if you're comparing him to Murder by the Book, those killers are pretentious and obnoxious. I find Adrian Corsini like enjoyable.
Yeah, I do too. I have to say before we even go further that this was Peter Falk's personal favorite episode.
Yeah, I did read that only when I was looking into this episode, though. I just didn't know that beforehand.
And he said that this was the first time that Columbo, the character of Columbo, had a genuine affection for the killer.
Okay.
And so, but you could see why, again, I don't know. I just love Donald Pleasance anyway, but yes, you're right. Definitely affable, endearing. It's almost like when the person who never jokes tells a joke, it's twice as funny.
Yes.
That kind of idea. You have this very serious person who just lives and breathes and drinks wine, and then he says, oh, this is obviously from the barefooted region of blah blah blah, and he says, well, I just peeked at the label. It's very endearing. Yeah,
it's lighthearted teasing that everyone's in on the joke. He's not making fun of anybody. He's not really putting anybody down either.
No,
he doesn't really put anybody
right.
down in this, except for his half brother. He doesn't put anybody down.
That's very true. So now we're at the auction, and a bottle is being auctioned that was created the year California became a state.
Okay.
That's just part of the hype up for the bottle for the auction. We find out that Adrian Corsini has already spent $18,000 so far.
Which, would you like to know how much that is?
Please.
$130,000.
Wow. And that's a lot of money on wine that he is likely just going to keep in his cellar and not drink or share or sell or anything.
Right.
This guy's got the same problem that Ray Milland did in Greenhouse Jungle, only instead of orchids, it's bottles of wine. He's got a problem.
He's got a wine problem, and it's not from drinking too much.
Yes, it's not intoxication. His wine problem is he's spending too much for it. Carsini still wants to buy this bottle that's up on auction after they'd spent a lot of money, and that was on buying lots of bottles. Not lots, like a bunch of them, but like a series, a case, you know. So this would be $5,000 for one bottle. Well, oh no, I just got slightly ahead of myself. He's going to pay a lot of money for this one bottle. And he says, and Karen is trying to keep him in check. I'm sure it's one of those things where he said, hey, don't let me spend too much, or gee, we have a budget. Let me know if we broach that budget. And then she does, and he ignores her anyway, like any stuff. But he says, look, I know it's too expensive to drink and I can't afford it, but life is painfully short.
Yeah. So
he bids on it. It gets bid up to $5,000. And as the bidding is going on, Karen says, do we really need it?
Right.
He says, no one really needs a $5,000 bottle of wine, Karen. I just don't want anyone else to have it. So in that short scene, we kind of see a little bit more about what he's all about. Yeah. And we kind of had inklings, but now we really have confirmed that this is just a guy who loves wine and wants to possess wine, not even necessarily drink it, but just to possess it.
So, well, he collects it. And, you know, his brother, Rick, did say to him, you're running this business like a hobby.
Yes.
And hobbyists collect things. And so Carsini is just collecting wine just to own it. I think he cherishes it just like someone might cherish a baseball card or sports memorabilia. You know how people just collect as hobbyists? That's really what he's doing, but he's not running the vineyard as a business, or at least a profitable business.
Right. He is acting as though the vineyard is profitable and he can afford this hobby. The problem is that he can't afford the hobby. He's probably burned through that money this is just one auction that he's now spent $23,000 in one auction, because he spent 18 and this was another 5. Yeah. So that's a lot of money for one auction. And as we saw earlier in the episode, you know, everybody was saying you could sell this for a fortune. It's like, yes, well, I just want to save it for my friends. Well, maybe sell a bottle or two just to kind of get money back into the business, you know.
That's what smart collectors do. They're if you're in the business of collecting just for collecting, you do invest so you can continue with your hobby, because in today's money, you're right, he spent over $160,000 in one trip to New York.
Yes.
At one auction, I should say.
At one auction, and that's not even counting the trip itself, the first class trip. I mean, that's just on wine. He coughed up that kind of money to just hoard, almost like a dragon hoarding gold. You know, that's not a way to stay in business, and you know, with consequences. So we're at the auction. They bought this extraordinarily expensive bottle of wine. Everyone applauds. Now Columbo appears.
Police Department, Lieutenant Columbo. Would you mind if I came in?
And he appears in his office as a woman, Rick's fiancée, comes in to say that she's worried because he didn't show up for their wedding and has been gone and unreachable for 3 days. Columbo tries to send her over to missing persons, but she said there was nobody there.
That's a good joke.
Yes.
She went up to missing persons, but there was nobody there.
There was nobody there, and I have to admit I didn't catch that until just now, and I'm the one who loves bad puns, so that's very funny. I did not catch that at all. That's great. And so Columbo is intrigued. He sees this beautiful young woman, sees that the guy who was going to marry her didn't show up and can't be reached, and just kind of ghosts her before there was such a thing as ghosting. She tells Columbo he went scuba diving and was going to visit his brother at the vineyard. There was the check and the letter for $5,000. And Columbo says, well, let me look into it for you. Yes. She gives him his card and a picture. It's kind of a little bit extended. I have to say, maybe a little filler here or there, but I didn't mind any of it this episode. I didn't realize until I saw it this time that this was an hour and 35-minute episode as opposed to an hour 15.
Yes.
And I did not feel it. I did not feel like, they're really stretching this out. It just seemed like maybe every scene was just like that little bit moment longer than a typical scene. But it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel extended. I think I just liked all the actors involved, and it was just good to watch them act, honestly.
Yeah, and it's a good story, and it's a good plot, so it's interesting too. So, not everything is given away. At this point, let me say this. At this point, we really don't know what the murder plot exactly is.
Yes.
We know that.
Yes, that's right.
So we're, as an audience, sort of intrigued, and a lot of times with the other episodes, we see the entire murder play out before us. So we already know what's happened, and now we're waiting for the remainder of the episode for Columbo to catch up to find out what happened. This one, it's still unfolding. All we know is that he knocked out his brother, dragged him down into a secret dungeon, and hogtied this giant man, and then went to New York, hid his car and went to New York. And then his beautiful soon-to-be bride, Rick's beautiful soon-to-be bride, comes in, and he's missing. He's not found yet. So it's still unfolding, which I think then is not filler. It leaves room for more plot explanation.
I would agree. This is to me is an example of doing a little longer episode the right way. Mm-hmm. So now we're cutting back to the flight back home from New York with Karen and Adrian, and he's cradling that $5,000 bottle that's wrapped in bubble wrap like a baby. And this, again, a funny little scene. Karen asks him if he's going to need a lift home after the airport, and he says no, his car is in the lot. And then as an afterthought, he asks her if she'll need a lift, and she says, no, I can take a cab, and pauses, and he just says, good. And she's like, it was clear she was hoping he would offer her a lift home, but he doesn't, because he just doesn't think about anyone but himself right now. At the what he cares about, he's holding in his arms, which is that $5,000 bottle of wrapped wine. They're at home. We cut to it being late at night again. And so Carsini, and I guess I can call him Carsini because now he's the only living Carsini.
Okay.
So instead of calling him Adrian, I might go back and forth. But Carsini takes Rick's car out of the garage, and he puts all the scuba gear in the car. He goes to get the body because now he's dead. I mean, he's been hogtied in a wine cellar for a week. He's now clearly dead. And so the plan at this point, you're right, we didn't know the full extent of it, but now it's a little more clear. We don't see the process, but we know that Adrian has put his brother Rick in his swimming gear.
Right.
Drove Rick's car out to the coast and dumped him in the ocean.
Yes.
And the idea is that he wants to make it look like Rick died scuba diving, not drowning, but that he hit his head and therefore, when knocked unconscious, ran out of air from the oxygen tank and suffocated because he had no air. So he didn't drown, so he didn't have to worry about there being no water in his lungs. It's just that he suffocated.
I do have a minor issue.
Yes, okay.
With this. Okay, so do you remember the episode Double Shock with Martin Landau?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you remember the whole way that Columbo caught them is that no one man could lift another man out of a bathtub and drag him downstairs and hook him up to an electric bike?
Yes.
And now Martin Landau's got to be 6'2", easily.
I would
man.
clearly have said higher. Yeah.
Donald Pleasance tops has to be 5'6".
No, that is a flaw. There's no way Donald Pleasance is dragging this athlete.
His brother's like 210 pounds. Yeah. I think just dressing
Easily
him
6'2".
and undressing him is going to be exhausting. He's going to drag his body out a wine cellar, pick him up, put him into a car, drive him, toss him off a cliff with such force that he does make it to the water and doesn't like land on the rocks below. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, listen.
Yeah, that's something that we kind of have to overlook because that is, if they showed us him, wheeling a wheelbarrow into the wine cellar, maybe, but no, they didn't show anything. They basically showed him with the scuba gear looking around at his dead brother tied up, and then the next scene is the car at the beach and his brother in the water, and that's all we see. That's a bit of a stretch of the imagination. We'll have to kind of pretend that that's just somehow capable of that, but that's fair. There's no pretending on that one. That's saying, fair. Yeah.
Martin Landau, they're like, you couldn't pick up a frail old man out of a bathtub and carry him down one flight of stairs, but this, no problem.
But this easily could be done by himself. Yes. while putting a fold-away bike in the trunk of the car so he can get back home again.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, of course, the body was found relatively close to shore. The car is there. There's a bit of an exchange between the cop and Columbo about how nice and expensive the car is.
Right.
And so that gives us, the audience, a good long time to look at the car, which is kind of a clever way to do that, because we really get to see that the car is still shiny and beautiful and that the convertible top is down.
Yes.
Now, but they don't make a mention of either of those points at the time, but we do get to see that.
Right.
And then Columbo finds out because one of the guys on the scene recognized the victim as Enrico Carcini, because when he would throw a party every birthday, and the guy who witnessed this and can identify him was one of the waiters, you know, that would sometimes cater the party. And that's where we find out that he was going to be 29, you know, and meanwhile, you know, I don't care. That's an old looking 29. That's a race car driver, fast women and faster cars 29. So, of course, Columbo now has to go back and tell the fiance. So he tells her it's bad news. Everything kind of falls into place for the killer. You know, one of the first things she says is, I tried to warn him not to go scuba diving twice in one day. So obviously he has a habit of doing it more than once in a day. Right. You know, everybody really, they're sad, but they're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense that he would have died that way. Like everybody is sad, but nobody is shocked.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Because he's a skydiver. He does all of these things. So everyone's kind of sad about it. She, of course, is crushed, understandably. In fact, she even says, look, I am comfortable. I have money. He didn't need money to marry me. He just felt like he needed to, I guess, for his own sake, but he really didn't have to. Right. So that's kind of all we see of her for a little bit. So now Columbo's in a bar having a beer, which is kind of the first time we see him doing that, I believe. And he's next to a character actor whose name I forget and meant to look up, but
something Donner.
Okay.
I looked it up.
Do you remember? Okay.
Yeah, it's something Donner because he is a character actor for sure.
Yeah, he's every place. I always like him, and he's playing kind of a talky drunk, but
he looks a little bit like Harry Dean Stanton to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's like that type.
Absolutely that type. If you said, get me Harry Dean Stanton, we can't afford him. All right, get me this guy. Yeah. You know, that's, but he himself is great, you know, so it's very good. Of course, the very helpful news report just kind of outlining details they never would on a news report. But the reporter saying that Rick was an amateur race car driver who was found dead from suffocation. What I thought was interesting in that, they briefly said that he was a race car driver who was an amateur race car driver, but didn't turn pro because he was always in it for the sport rather than the money, which is pretty, I mean, it must be genetic because that's pretty much what Adrian does. He's in it for the sport, not the money, because it's the sport of collecting wine. They're saying that he died around the 18th. They're kind of pinpointing that was the date of his death.
Right. So even though they only recently found him, the coroner who was interviewed on this news broadcast, you're right, that would never happen. But the coroner said it looks like he died about 6 days ago.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. They didn't have the date just then, but they tell us the date later on. And so Columbo, for some reason, is trying to find out if it rained that day.
Right.
And he asks everybody in the bar. Nobody knows. He tries to call. The offices are closed. This is before the internet when he could have just looked it up.
Right.
So a little window in what life pre-internet was. So he has to call back. There's nobody there to talk to. There's nobody who knows that information.
Wait, you know, it was cute too. Talk about a window into that life. He asks the bartender for change of a quarter to make a phone call.
Yes.
Because I think it was a dime.
It was a dime.
Right?
Yep,
yeah.
It was a dime. It was like drop a dime. He dropped the dime on. That was slang for he tattled to the police. He dropped a dime on him. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. He had to get change of a quarter to put a dime in the phone to make a call. Absolutely. And a dime in 1973. No,
70 cents? I don't know.
The next scene is Columbo taking a tour of Carcini wines.
Yes.
So we kind of already know that this man time is limited for Columbo to decide to take a tour of the vineyard. And we find out they make 6 different types of wines. After the tour is over, he meets an elderly gentleman who is surprised that the place is still open. Columbo said, gee, it's kind of strange that the place didn't close down out of respect.
Right.
And the elderly gentleman kind of sweeping up is saying, no, Mr. Carsini drew us all together and said, my brother Rick is very special and he would have wanted us to all work. And Columbo said, oh, does that sound like the kind of man he was? The gentleman said, no. No, he was a partier. He would have said, you know what, everybody take the day off. I'm dead. Just mourn me. Take a day off. Look at some old racetrack videos of me.
Celebrate your life.
Yeah, exactly. He would not have wanted to do that. And so he gets directed to the phone. Columbo finds out this time, because now the office is open. We don't hear it, but it's pretty clear that it did rain that day. Right. And we do find that out later on. But he got that information, and then he was about to leave, and then he had a thought, and he started to dial another number. And for the first time ever, Columbo starts whistling This Old Man.
Yes.
And that was absolutely an ad-lib by Peter Falk. It was just a tune that he always liked.
Okay.
There was nothing special behind it. It was just a tune that he liked, and he just thought rather than having the silence of him dialing a phone that he would just start whistling that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because otherwise it would just be us watching Columbo dial a phone. But back then, rotary, you had to do the number and let the wheel rotate back to where, its starting position, so that, he just, to fill a little time, he just started to whistle that tune. Okay. So, fun little sidebar. We were originally going to call this episode, or I guess I should say I don't think you were ever sold on it, but I originally thought of calling this whole podcast, This Old Man, a Columbo. Yes. Because I always associate that with Columbo. And you had rightly pointed out that he didn't actually whistle that until season 3. So 2 entire seasons and a couple of episodes went by before he ever whistled that tune. I believe you would ask your friends what they most associate Columbo with, and that's how you would propose Rumpled Trenchcoat, which is the far superior title.
Well, thank you. Yes, we did ask around. I think we had a couple of names together, and I polled, what do you think is the best one? And Rumpled Trenchcoat won. There was some conversation, if you recall, whether we should call it Rumpled Trenchcoat or Rumpled Raincoat. And I was adamant that it was a trench coat, not a raincoat. Yes. And you are kind of correct. It is a raincoat, but it's
also a trench coat.
It's a trench coat.
I guess you could call it. I mean, if we called it Rumpled Top Coat, I don't think that would have had the same impact. And it is, No, I'm very happy with their choice, but I thought that was a nice little window for anyone who was interested in where we got the name, that's where we got the name. So yes. That second phone call is to the victim's fiance, and he asks her, how did Rick feel about his convertible? And she joked that she felt sometimes he loved it more than her. Right. So that's, again, a little more information. And he whistles This Old Man again.
Yes.
So at this point, he's already established a pattern of when he's got a good idea or he thinks he's onto something, that he now starts whistling This Old Man.
Yes, this is very cool. I like this.
It's a neat origin story of that.
Yeah.
Columbo, after the tour, goes to Carsini's office and, of course, meets Karen. Is very flippant with her in a way that even he says after the fact is not like him.
Yes? Is Mr. Carsini in?
Your name, please.
Is he in?
I must have your name.
Why would you want my name when you have such a nice name yourself? Karen Fielding. I think that's a lovely name.
Look, whoever you are, I'm a busy woman and I don't have time for games.
My name is Lieutenant Columbo. I'm with the police department.
Oh.
He was heckling her. I don't know what was happening. I don't know what that was. It was weird. Because he wasn't really flirting with her. It wasn't flirting. No, he was just kind of giving her a hard time, but she wasn't giving him a hard time. So it was strange.
It's almost like this is where we have to go on the supernatural element of him. Like he somehow knew that she was tangentially involved and was just giving her a hard time, because otherwise why would he do such a thing? But he introduces himself properly, and she tells him that Carsini's in the lab. Columbo goes over to the lab, where once again the lab person that Carcini is talking to says, hey, I'm sorry for your loss. Are there going to be any changes here? And Adrian says, oh, no. My brother would have wanted us to continue to put out high quality wine and blah, blah, blah. So again, he keeps attributing things to his brother that everybody knows his brother wouldn't have any thoughts or care about whatsoever. This is a man who just, never showed up at the vineyard except to borrow money from his brother. So Columbo goes in, shows him his badge after initially Adrian thought he was applying for a job, and then they go back to Carcini's office. So Columbo sits down as Carcini pours them some wine, and that's where we see for the first time Carcini saying, hey, please no smoking around wine. Some people say cigar and wine goes together. I disagree. I think that the one detracts from the other. So, and then they just have a cute exchange about Columbo being Italian and not being able to identify wine or sing, or, you can kind of see that there is not affection for each other, but at least they're getting along. This is somebody that I think Columbo might have almost been able to be friends with, or at least acquaintances with, had he not been a murderer.
Yes, I would agree.
Again, Columbo knows how to approach him because he is still Columbo. He may be showing signs of liking the guy, but he is still Columbo. So he knows to appeal to somebody who has that great a knowledge of something they love, does want to share it. So, unlike the chess player who says, I want to learn how to play chess, and we'll take a correspondence course. In this case, Columbo's saying, I'd love to come back in an unofficial capacity to learn about wine. Right. And Adrian basically says, yeah, anytime you want. He's happy to teach him about it. But while he's talking with Columbo initially, Carcini tells him about the process of decanting wine, and while he's talking with Columbo, he's decanting the wine and says that this is this is extremely important. If you make a mistake now, it could result in disaster later, foreshadowing. And then it obviously takes a steady hand, and it's something that he doesn't let anybody else do but himself. He's the only one who will decant his own wine. And again, Adrian is not surprised. He says he's saddened by Rick's death, but not surprised because of the life he led. They also find out during the process, because they call Karen in to confirm the dates, that Rick visited on the 16th, which was a Sunday, and we already know from the coroner that putting the death on the 18th.
Right.
And Columbo had made mention of the fact that it rained on the 18th, but that Rick loved his car too much to go out scuba diving, leaving the top down, knowing that it had rained and that it was going to rain. And it was kind of raining all day off and on. And also, it was surprising that the car would have been there for several days and nobody noticing.
Nobody noticing and calling it in. And Adrian's response to that is, well, it's a pretty remote area, which maybe.
Fair.
But there was somebody fishing there that found him same day. But the other thing that was mentioned was that the car is spotless. So how could it be outside in the elements for 6 days, not have any dried up rain spots on it, anything?
And leaving the top down, which we know that the brother would never have done.
Right.
And Adrian makes the classic Columbo villain mistake of coming up with an explanation. He
does.
Columbo says, why would that top have been down? And so Carcini says, well, we get heavy winds with these rains. So maybe it wasn't fastened and the wind blew the top back down.
Right.
And Columbo steps out of the office and, of course, bursts right back into the office again.
Yes.
And this is a low-level Columbo bomb. But it is definitely a Columbo bomb. It's low level. It's not terrible. But he just said, I could believe if the wind blew it halfway and maybe even 3/4 of the way, but it couldn't have blown it all the way down.
Right. It really couldn't have.
No, it's impossible. It can't have brought it down and secured it or whatever. Yeah. It's kind of dumb. It's not how that worked. So Carcini is still not willing to let it go. Said, well, did you see the car?
That's right. This actually goes on for a little bit. That's right.
It does go on for a little bit because he's not willing to give it up just yet.
Right.
And Columbo pulls out his pencil and says, I'm not good at details, which we already know is a lie.
Right.
That's why I write everything down. The top was down. Oh, well. It doesn't matter. They're pictures of the car. I'll look at it later. It's just like, that whole thing was for nothing because he knew that of course the top is down. That was a mistake on his part. Adrian blew it. And so then we just kind of see the camera linger on Carsini's face, kind of realizing, well, if it were up to me, I would have taken a flight type of error that he made. Yes. While Columbo had stepped out of the office briefly before bursting back in, he got a phone call from the coroner's office. We find out later on that phone call let Columbo know that Rick hadn't eaten for 2 days before he died.
That's right.
So it's obviously that's significant because there'd be no reason for him not to eat and then go scuba diving. So that's going to be important in just a little bit. Columbo, I can't remember. I guess the order isn't quite important, but he just confirms with the fiance and I guess her brother or friend that this guy eats all the time. He's an athlete. He eats a lot, burns it up. That he would never go.
He's not fasting.
Stomach, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
No kind of special diet, no kind of religious exemption. Nothing like that. That's not something he would have done voluntarily, type of thing.
Right. And that's true for all these murder mystery shows where it's like, well, if somebody's doing something they ordinarily wouldn't, that's going to stand out.
Yes, absolutely. So now Columbo is talking with two of the wine experts that we saw earlier in the episode. They never saw the brother, which they wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were with Carsini the whole time and he never left the room, except that one time he went to get that special claret.
Right.
And then and that he was out for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, maybe a little longer.
Right.
But he also let one of them decant the claret.
Yes.
Which requires a steady hand to do.
Yes.
That was extremely important. The other people are a little nonplussed. They don't quite know what he's getting at. We, the audience, know that Columbo has once again, as you just said a second ago, something that somebody does all the time is now done differently that is going to stand out. Why does he make a point of saying, I never let anyone else decant wine, except for this one time on the day my brother visited me and was never seen again? Yes.
Right.
So Columbo then gets a crash course in wine from Punky Brewster's dad wearing a mustache. Yeah.
That is not Punky Brewster's dad.
Absolutely
That's
was.
Henry?
Yes.
No,
yes,
it's not.
Or Police Academy guy. Who,
really?
I forget. Yeah, that was him with a mustache and a fake accent.
He looks so different. Also, he was always old.
He was always old. Absolutely.
He looks older in this Columbo than he did as Punky Brewster's dad.
He absolutely did. All right, now you're gonna make me look it up. But
look it up. I can't imagine that's Punky Brewster's father.
Okay, hold on a second here.
We need a Karen. We need a research assistant.
Okay, it is George Gaines, who is absolutely Punky Brewster's father, and he's listed in the credits as Frenchman.
That's crazy.
It's him. It is.
I mean,
him.
I believe you. And now I definitely believe you, but I can't even say. You know what's funny? Sometimes on shows, when someone disguises themselves, they put on a mustache and then like no one recognizes him. And it's like a joke, right? Where you're like, how could you not recognize this person?
How could you not know?
All right, this mustache worked on me. I had no idea that this was a person that I watched growing up on every episode of Punky Brewster.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
It is. So we can no longer laugh at Lois Lane not recognizing Superman, because he's wearing glasses as Clark Kent. So yes, absolutely. So he gets a credit. So it's really funny. That accent didn't help either. Which is impressive. It didn't sound like somebody doing a fake accent. It just sounded like a really French accent.
You know what I have to say about that accent? It sounds like, I don't know if French people would be offended by it, but to an American, that's exactly how all French people sound to me.
Yeah. It pretty much sounds like any moment he was going to wake up Mrs. Potts and do a dance number. Yeah.
Like, ooh la la. I don't know if that's my French. Le Eiffel Tower.
Oh.
I think it could be offensive.
I think it could be as offensive as if Carsini's brother had instead gone in and said, "Hey, I want to sell the vineyard." Oh,
it's me, a Carsini.
So maybe it's the equivalent of that.
Okay.
Now Columbo is back in Carsini's office, is offered another glass of wine, and he says, "Oh no, let me guess. He kind of pulls the same trick that Carcini did earlier in the episode. He tastes it. He talks about a few different things he learned from that Frenchman. And then it's revealed that he just simply guessed that their vineyard makes 6 wines, only 3 are red.
Right.
He had one the other day, and this didn't taste like that, so he knew it was one of the other 2. And Carcini is very charmed by how clever he was, but I think that should have been a warning to him how clever he was. I think he didn't. I think he didn't take that warning well. It was all done lighthearted, good spirits, but it should have been a clue that Columbo just fooled you on your own turf with your own products. So you should be a little more careful here. As they're talking, they talk about the wine vault. Columbo again finesses by saying, "Oh, some people pay as much as $100 a bottle." We just saw him spend $5,000 on one bottle.
When you really think about it too, because I'm not like a wine connoisseur, right? So like I'll order a glass of wine with dinner sometimes. I'll pick up a bottle of wine here or there. And if maybe it's a little telling of me, if I spend more than $30 a bottle, I'm like, this is an expensive bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Because I don't know enough about wine to discern that way. Right. So $100 even today on a bottle of wine is like a splurge. So for Columbo to say to him, 50 years ago, that this is $100 bottle of wine, and for Adrian to say, oh, that's like kind of middle of the road.
Mid-range.
Yeah, mid-range. Like that's really, like you're really now, this, like I'm really connecting with how much money this really is.
Yeah, we're talking about this being a problem because you're right. If a dinner for one at a nice restaurant, including all dinner and drinks, if it's more than 100, it's like, ooh, that's that was nice, but that was kind of expensive.
Right.
To then spend $100 that long ago on one bottle, and to have Adrian dismiss that as well, that's kind of mid-range.
Yeah.
And it's all a way for Columbo to say, oh, can I see? I never saw a $1,000 bottle of wine before. So, he obviously is, again, running rings around Carcini. He just doesn't realize it yet. So they go into the wine vault because, of course, Carcini wants to show him,
Yes.
And Columbo immediately says, oh, this looks like a crypt.
Yes.
Which, of course, it literally was for a while.
It was a crypt.
Yes, it was a crypt for a while. And so we learn a little bit about wine in this scene. We learn that the wine has to be kept cool because, this time of year it's not that bad, but during the hotter weather, wine has to be kept, below a certain temperature or could be damaged. So we get a little mini wine education as an audience because that's going to be important to understanding the gotcha at the end.
Yes.
And that he has a ventilation and air conditioning unit that he turns on. Columbo expresses concern about, I wouldn't want to get trapped down here like the cask of the Amontillado. And Adrian says, look, nobody can get trapped in here. Let me show you, because Columbo just wasn't dropping it. He wasn't letting it go. Now, we as the audience know, or should at least suspect, that if he's being that focused on something, it's because he wants to pull a fast one, but we don't quite know it yet. So Carcini steps out and closes the door behind him to let Columbo figure out how to get out. And just mere moments later, Columbo opens it and he says, all he had to do was push. And so Carcini said, see, I told you, nobody's going to get trapped in there.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Because all of that happened. Is that room like sealed?
Okay. This is the question that I always had about this episode.
Okay.
What was the cause of death? It had to be it had to be suffocation.
Yes.
Because we know that was the cause of death. So my feeling is that room has to be sealed, because otherwise he couldn't have died in 2 days. Because that's what we find out. Basically, when he knocked him out on the 16th, when he visited and tied him up, and then got on a plane for New York and turned off the ventilation and air conditioning, that he had died 2 days later on the 18th. And that's how the coroner was able to say on the 18th he died of suffocation. End of story. So it would have to be, he couldn't have died of suffocation if there was any kind of opening or air vents other than the ventilation machine that Carcini intentionally turned off. So basically that was an vacuum sealed place.
That's my question. Was it vacuum sealed, air sealed?
Because basically a vault. If
That's
you think
okay.
there's a vault, yeah.
But then my next question is, since Rick was knocked out, but certainly alive,
Yes.
he was unconscious and then died. In other words, like he never woke up, because if he did wake up, he could just crawl. I know he was hogtied, but you can roll over to a door and kick it open still.
If that's all that had to happen, if he just had to push it open, yes. So my feeling is he never regained consciousness.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's my feeling about it. At least it makes it less horrible to me, like the thought of him waking up tied up and that's really horrific. Like that would have really tanked this guy's sympathy meter. But the fact is, I in my mind, the only way this murder works is if he never regains consciousness.
Okay. I agree.
Okay, yes. All right. Columbo just opened the door, came on out, pretty clear, very easy. Nobody awake and conscious should have a problem opening that door from the inside. So now they're outside, they're walking. Columbo is again whistling This Old Man after he talks about the wedding gift. So, he says, oh, that was a very generous gift that you gave. I can get that check back to you. It says, oh, no, just tear it up. I mean, what are you going to do? It was going to be a wedding gift. So, and that's when Columbo starts whistling This Old Man.
Yeah, because it's the exact amount of the wine he just bought.
Yes.
That $5,000 is the exact amount of the wine he just bought at auction. Also, I like how Adrian's like, oh no, generously, just tear it up, not leave it to his fiance.
Yes, that was my thought.
My
thought was it was going to be a wedding gift. You might as well give it to the fiance, which I think would have gone slightly further toward a lesser detective, on the case might have thought, oh, okay, that just kind of makes sense that you want to give it to his grieving widow to pay for his funeral, maybe.
At the very least, pay for his funeral, yes.
But not the case. Corsini then says, hey, when are you going to release the body? He wanted to be cremated. I just kind of want to get things going with this. And Columbo acts like it's not his choice. Like he's saying, I don't know. I'm not sure what the holdup is. I don't know why they won't release the body yet. I don't know why I was called because I'm homicide. I just go where they tell me, just a whole like, well, wait, you know all these things and everybody knows you know all these things. But Columbo walks a little further away and then turns around and one more things him and says, oh, I remember now. They're not releasing his body because the car was left out in the rain. And then we had very warm weather after that. And there were no sunspots or water spots on the car. The car looked like it came off a showroom, were his exact words.
Yes.
And I can't explain it. And Adrian says, well, when you find out the reason, will you tell me? And this episode, he does say, oh, you'll be the first to know. Which is one of my favorite Columboisms is, oh, don't worry, you'll be the first to know.
That's great.
So now Columbo visits Karen at her home late at night, and she lies and says that she saw Rick leave. Because Columbo asked, did you see Rick come and go?
Right.
And she did see him arrive. Yes. But she never saw him leave. And she lies and says she saw him leave. And that seemed to be all Columbo needed to say, that's it. I can stop the case. I'm done. I got it. Even though the security guard said he saw Rick arrive but never leave. And Karen calls him a drunk. And says, oh, well, that security guard is our best customer. Of course he didn't see him leave. Adrian keeps him on because he can't get a job anywhere else. Yeah. And what we already know from earlier on in the episode is Corsini demands perfection, and he pays a high salary for that perfection and that good work. He's not going to hire a drunk security guard of all things. No. So kind of an absurd lie. So it's not just a lie, it's an unbelievable lie. Columbo borrows her phone in her house to call Corsini to apologize and to invite Corsini and Karen out to dinner to apologize for him being so hard on him, which he wasn't. The entire episode, he wasn't. He was far more harassing to a lady in waiting who didn't even officially commit a crime per the examining board, and he didn't at all accuse him of murder, but he wanted to make it right by taking them out to dinner.
Well, he gave Karen a harder time than he gave Adrian.
Honestly, he did quite
Right?
a bit, and not even in questioning. All he said was, "Hey, did you see him leave?" Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that was it. He just teased her a little bit the first time they met.
That's it.
By not introducing himself right away, and that was it. That was all of everything. And you're right, that was still worse than how he treated Adrian. Columbo then leaves her place and then immediately taps on her window.
I know.
And so she has to open her window.
Yes.
For Columbo just to ask, how long were you working with Carsini? And I believe it was 12 years.
She said 12 years.
And he said, oh, you must really like him. Okay, goodbye.
Yep.
It's the next evening, because that's when they were going to go out. They were going to go out to dinner the very next evening. Columbo said, hey, Adrian, pick the place, and it's all on me. We now see Adrian and Karen kind of hustling a little bit to the car. She keeps calling him Mr. Carsini, and he says, well, you know what, for tonight, let's waive the formalities. Let's just, call me Adrian. And she's very pleased by that.
Yeah.
She's worried because she still thinks that Columbo suspects Adrian of killing his brother Rick. She, of course, is right.
Right.
I mean, her instinct is completely correct.
Right.
And that's when Adrian asks her, well, do you suspect me?
Right.
And she says no, but we also find out, we know as an audience, we don't find out yet. She says, no, I don't suspect you. And I wouldn't blame you if you did, but I don't suspect you. But we as an audience know that, of course, she does. She lied about seeing his brother leave. So she would not lie if she didn't think she had to lie. So that explodes a little bit later on. But we kind of already know that she had suspected him probably ever since that day. So Columbo arrives at the restaurant first. Then we get to see Vito Scotti in his first Columbo appearance. And he's the character actor. I like to say that Dad jokes about being in more episodes of Columbo than Peter Falk. Because he showed up in so many of them as a character actor spot. And here he's the maitre d'. He directs Columbo with much disdain toward a table by the kitchen. I mean, you could see the kitchen doors. Like, it looks like they would actually, if they open those doors, it would actually hit the person sitting. That's how close it is to the kitchen.
Yes.
And Columbo immediately says, oh, thank you very much, takes the menu and says, could I speak to the wine steward?
Right.
And this is such a fancy place that he said, oh, the red wine steward or the white wine steward? Which would be completely impractical because it means they both have to go to every table if one person wants red wine or one wants white wine at the table. But just to let us know quickly, this is a very expensive restaurant.
Yeah.
Very exclusive. And that a big part of their restaurant is the wine choice.
Right.
Which is extremely important. And of course it would be a place that Carsini would frequent because they would be known for their wine selection. Carsini and Karen show up and Carsini immediately walks over to Columbo and says, what is this? Why this is an insult? Why are you seated by the kitchen? And the maitre d' is simpering, saying, oh, I didn't know, I blah, blah. And Carsini just says, look, get us a better table and stop simpering. And so they do. They get to another nice table and they have a very pleasant evening out. Mm-hmm. They're eating. Columbo has learned a lot from that guy and his own research, and Carsini was complimenting him on his choice of wine with appetizers, with the meal, with everything. He said, I'm very excited to hear what you're going to choose for our after dinner drink. Mm-hmm. And that's when Columbo says, I have an idea. I know what I want. I just hope they have it. Ferrier Vintage Port 1945. And of course, Carsini kind of laughs and says, you've given this poor man an impossible task. It's extremely rare. I know this port very well. It's extremely rare. And even if they have it, the cost would be prohibitive. It's obviously one of his extraordinarily expensive wine choices. The steward says, well, let me check and see. Little small talk, and they talk about how Mrs. Columbo couldn't make it because he couldn't get a babysitter.
Yes.
And this is the only time they mention kids, but I think that's a flat out lie. I don't think they've never mentioned kids before or since, for the most part that I can recall. Maybe they did here or there. But I just think he had no intention of bringing his wife along to this.
No.
And
Columbo's working. This is not really a pleasant dinner that he's having. He's working.
He is working. It's under the guise of Columbo being grateful that Carcini didn't report him to his superiors.
Right.
Even though, again, he did nothing wrong. He didn't harass him.
No.
Every time he was there, he was welcomed. It wasn't like, Lieutenant, I'm growing tired of you.
No.
It was just always,
was that your Ray Milan?
About wine.
That was pretty good.
All right. Then I'll pretend it was my Ray Milan, but it was wrong. It was supposed to be closer to Dick Van Dyke, but I'll take it.
That's not.
That's why I don't do impressions on this show.
That's so funny. It doesn't sound anything like Dick Van Dyke.
No, I know.
Okay, sorry.
No, I mean, obviously that was terrible. So he comes back with the wine, and he actually had it. He serves it, and so Adrian is dumbfounded that they actually had this. Karen was about to pull out a cigarette, and he begs her not to smoke because, again, he doesn't want the smoke to interfere with this delightful taste that he's going to experience. Columbo takes a sip.
Tastes terrific to me. Drinks all around.
Drinks all around.
Wonderful. What body.
This is dreadful.
Monsieur, you...
This is dreadful. Don't you realize that a great wine is like a great work of art? It has to be nurtured. It has to be taken care of. You have subjected this port to a temperature in excess of 150 degrees. Such disdain cannot and must not be tolerated. I advise you not to pay for the check.
But, sir, I think that...
This wine has been oxidized by overheating. No. Where did you keep it? On top of the stove?
I assure you, monsieur...
Don't you know any delicate wine spoils by being subjected to a rapid change in temperature? Serving this iodine is an insult.
Monsieur Carcini, is there something wrong?
Is there something wrong? Everything is wrong. An exciting meal has been ruined by the presence of this liquid filth.
Everybody else at the table thought it was delicious and delightful, but his palate was so sensitive that he could tell that this wine was exposed to high heat and that it ruined it. So Carcini takes Karen out of the restaurant, furious, and says, if I were you, I wouldn't pay the bill. Columbo insists on paying. The maitre d' insists on not paying because, Carcini is obviously a very good customer and he certainly doesn't want any trouble. Columbo starts to go outside, and then he sneaks back and sneaks some money to the maitre d' to actually pay for the bill. Not
right.
Get out that way. And just a cute little moment where both the maitre d' and the wine steward take a sip of the wine and just kind of smack their lips, in unison, trying to taste, if they can find anything wrong with it. And they clearly are not able to.
No.
Columbo jokes outside, well, that's a great way to get out of paying a bill. I'll have to remember. Carcini apologizes for his loss of temper, and Columbo goes into a little story about how last week the temperature got really hot and his refrigerator had broken, so his beer was tepid when he wanted a nice cold beer on a hot day. And so he planted the idea that last week the temperature went up incredibly high. Right. Unusual for that time of year, but it went up incredibly high. And then planted the idea that Karen lied to him by saying, and I have to thank you, Karen, for ending this case for me. Oh,
yeah. She did end it for him, actually.
She did. She certainly did. By saying that you saw Rick leave, I now had no reason to believe that there was anything blah, 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 blah. So basically, he told Carcini to his face that Karen lied for him. That's reading between the lines there, but that's what he did. So he basically said, hey, it got really hot last week, and your receptionist lied to me about your brother leaving, and then said goodnight.
Yeah, he did.
So, of course, Carsini got very, very stiff and said, thanks for the dinner, and then left with Karen. So in the car ride now, a lot is coming out. He said, you did not have to lie for me, because she had just said, I didn't suspect you. And now he finds out that she lied for him. So she obviously suspected him.
And he didn't ask her to.
He did not.
No.
And that's what he was also more angry about.
I agree.
More the lack of control. I think if he said, hey, could you mention it, he would have been fine with it.
Absolutely.
The fact is she took it upon herself to do it. And he said you didn't have to. Columbo had no proof.
Right.
Which is kind of confessing to the murder. What he was most upset about was he didn't like her having a hold on him. It's not quite being blackmailed, but he thought he had everything handled. Now she lied for him to the police, and now he kind of has to deal with that.
Yeah.
And that was after she confessed her feelings toward him, that she was a receptionist for 12 years, and he's looking at it like, oh, great, I lost the best receptionist I ever had.
Right.
Who now I find out loves me.
Yes.
And I'm not interested in you.
No.
Or at least I don't know how I feel about you.
Right.
Which is strange, because at the beginning, when they were getting into the car, he said, call me Adrian. Mm-hmm. And if things go well, maybe we can just waive the formality completely. Mm-hmm. So the implication was he might have been up to perhaps dating her, or at least changing their relationship to less formal. But then when he found out that she did this, that all went out the window. So that's maybe we can discuss. So what do you think? Do you think that he was gearing up toward maybe seeing her in a different light, and then found out about this and it just shut that window down? Or what were your thoughts on this?
I think if we're really going to do like a psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that he's feeling pretty good that his brother is dead, that he doesn't have to worry about the winery being sold out from under him. I think he's feeling pretty good that he got away with murder, because here the lieutenant is taking him out to dinner to celebrate how he's not a murderer.
Right.
And I think she even mentioned like he's acting like a little bit differently. And I didn't think of it as gearing up to date her. I thought he was just like, hey, you know what? Life is real short. Things are real good. And you know what? You've been a loyal, wonderful secretary for me for all these years. You don't have to call me Mr. Carsini anymore. Call me Adrian. So I didn't take it as a dating thing, but more as just like, you know what? We're more than colleagues at this point. You can just call me Adrian.
Okay.
But I don't want to date you. I didn't take it as like he was interested in her in that way.
Okay. I think what threw me is when they were getting into the car, he had said, we're going out on something that could only be considered a date.
He did.
You're calling me Mr. Carsini. But I could absolutely see all of that. He may, just like you said, there may be a spring in his step knowing his vineyard is safe.
That's a good way to put it. A spring in his step.
Yeah.
Edit out everything I just said and just say that. That's true. He had a little spring in his step. And now he's like, hey, you can call me Adrian. Let's go celebrate me being not guilty of murder, because I'm definitely not guilty of murder. And you're right. The one thing he was really annoyed about, not that she necessarily lied, but by her lying, he now has a loose thread. Yeah. And I don't take it even necessarily as control. It's more just like, oh, great. Now what am I going to do? If you lied for me, now you have something over me. I don't know about you. I'm one of those people. I don't want to owe anybody money. I don't want to, like I hate having, the expression he uses how I feel. I hate having to feel like someone has something over me.
Yeah.
I don't want to owe anybody anything. And he didn't ask for it. So now he owes her, and he didn't ask her. So he's owing for no reason of his own doing.
Yeah, he didn't choose for her to do that.
Right.
He owes her, and what she wants him to owe her is marriage. Yeah, I mean, she flat out said, hey, look, people have gotten married over less. You don't have to love me to marry me.
True.
But that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want, because
power play Karen.
Absolutely. And look, that's I even as Columbo said, even though he knows that she lied, or certainly suspects that she lied, that is the one thing that clears Adrian, is I saw Rick leave. And if she takes that back, then Adrian is right back on the suspect list.
That's true.
he owes her big time for a favor he didn't ask for.
That's right.
So that's what he's dealing with. And
Yeah.
at the same time, he's mulling over what Columbo had said about the really hot weather. So he's going right to his wine cellar and is just furious, just smashing one of the bottles even right then and there, because he realizes that all of them have been destroyed. We next see him hurling bottles off of the, again, getting rid of refuse, only this time it's his brother, it's bottles of wine.
Yeah, instead of poison ivy cream, like in the last episode of...
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, he's... everything ends up in the Pacific.
Pretty much that's it. Everything, if it can be hooked onto rocks, it's going to get hooked onto rocks out there. So he's throwing the bottles out in baskets, and he's going back for another basket, and that's when he sees Columbo sitting on the tailgate of his car. And he again tries to hold out just a little bit by saying, these are just some inferior wines I'm getting rid of. And Columbo mentions a fancy wine looking at the label, and Carcini says, well, just a good label doesn't necessarily mean a good wine, but you could tell he's not himself, even himself is like, Columbo just jumps in and says, hey, look, Thursday was the day that did it.
Yeah.
Thursday, the temperature got up to 109 degrees, unusual for the time of year. With the ventilation and air conditioning off, it got very hot in that vault, and it destroyed all of the wine. And, Carcini basically admits to it. Carcini then asks him, how did you know?
Yes.
And Columbo said, I did a terrible thing, which is not the last time he says that.
No.
He said, I did a terrible thing. When I was pretending to be worried about being locked in the vault, before I left the vault, I grabbed a bottle of that port. Basically he grabbed, I'm sure at random, a bottle of expensive wine.
Yes.
And the steward was in on it. So, that's why I wanted to speak to the steward right away. And so we as an audience find out that the wine that the steward brought to the table that was destroyed because it was exposed to high heat was Carcini's own actual bottle from his wine cellar.
Yes.
That bottle of wine in the restaurant, that was your wine. See, the wine steward was in on it, and you did the rest.
I certainly did, didn't I? That's ironic.
Sir?
Well, I'm probably one of the few men in the world who could have told you that wine was spoiled and told you it was because it was overheated.
Yes, sir. It required a very delicate palate.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes this one of my favorite episodes, is that the killer is the only one who could have caught the killer.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Yes. Yeah.
So at that point, Columbo says, hey, am I going to get a confession? He says, yes, of course. There's no remorse. You're going to get a confession.
He does even say that. He says there is no remorse.
Yeah.
He does not care that he killed his half-brother at all.
Does not care at all. And he kind of rats out Karen here, too. He says, Karen had figured out what I did and was putting the screws to me. She's quite the Iron Maiden, and that freedom is relative.
How insult! I just have to say, the takeaway from this episode for me, and maybe I'm saying this too early, but the takeaway from this episode for me was never anything other than I was just always insulted on a fundamental level as being a woman, that this man would rather spend life in jail for murder than possibly have to be married to her.
I don't think you have to worry about a woman. I don't know about this particular woman. And I think
it's not that bad.
No, she's not. I really think that it's more him. I think that honestly, there would never have been a woman for him. I mean, unless the woman was a 5'6" bottle of Pernod Grigio or something, I don't think there ever would have been a woman for him. And that again, it would have been based on her having a hold on him, which he already hated.
I agree with all of that. I do think he only loves wine, and there is no way to get to this man's heart because he doesn't have a heart. He doesn't care about his dead brother. He doesn't care about any of that. But I'm just saying from a level of like, this old ball and chain. Yeah. That's what always stood out to me more than anything. Not like she's the worst and he's such a prize. I'm just saying the one thing I always remember from this episode is that it's like a little bit of a throwaway line. It's only one line in the entire episode, but basically Corsini would rather be in jail than married to her. And of course it's really not all that, but yes, it also is.
No, he's but like, absolutely. No, he very clearly, even throwing the bottles away, he could just tell Columbo, you know what, I think I'll keep the rest. There's nobody else on earth that could say those wine was destroyed.
That's
he'd have to drink it himself and try and keep a straight face. So, he still could have gotten out of it and just married Karen. But no, he absolutely would rather be in jail than be married against his will to her.
So insulting.
It is extraordinarily insulting. And now Karen is technically an accessory after the fact.
I think so, right?
So we're almost there. We might as well start talking about it in just a little bit. So just at the very, very end, Columbo is driving Corsini to take one last look at the vineyard and to drive him to jail. And Columbo gives him a bottle of what I thought was Chianti because it was a little bottle with the basket on it.
Like that basket weave around the body of the bottle. Yeah.
Which I thought was Chianti, but Corsini describes it as Montefiasconi, I think, which he says is an excellent dessert wine, which is perfect for the end course and the episode ends.
It's a good episode. This is a very good episode.
For the longest time, until Suitable for Framing finally took first spot for me, this was absolutely my favorite episode.
And is it because of what you just said? Is it because the killer is the only one on Earth? He did his own downfall.
I think that it's a huge part of it.
Okay.
I think the fact that Columbo could not have caught him if it wasn't for himself.
Yeah.
The fact that he is the only one who could have detected that there was a problem. Mm-hmm. The fact that he reacted so violently about it. Mm-hmm. Instead of just drinking it and just being a little disappointed that the wine wasn't the perfection that he was hoping it would be, not knowing it was his own bottle, but just the fact that he couldn't help himself. He had to react. He had to be furious about how this wine was mistreated.
Right.
And that, then he himself, when Columbo told him how hot that day got, and even then it was great. He said, "You remember how hot it was last week? Oh, wait, you guys were in New York."
Yeah.
That's right. I still tried to catch him that one last time. Corsini took away from that, these wines are destroyed. And he probably tasted at least one to confirm that they were ruined and then threw them away. So that was a big part of it. Another big part of it is I do love Donald Pleasance.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah,
so
he's great.
That was a big part of why I liked the episode. I think it was played not a lot, but a little more than some of the others. So familiarity helped me to like it a bit. And it's funny, and we'll talk about it, but I did, as you had talked about earlier, he is endearing. So there was a lot of Columbo in this episode, which I liked, and I think I also liked that.
It is a Columbo heavy episode. That's true. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of it, and which is good because there isn't always, and that I kind of liked that they liked each other.
You've learned very well, Lieutenant.
Thank you, sir. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
They had a good rapport, these two.
Yes.
It wasn't really cat and mouse. It was just, them talking and enjoying and learning and sharing.
There seemed to be a lot of that, and it was almost like, Columbo was a little reluctant, even though he murdered somebody in what could have been a horrible way, but he did. God, yes. He caught him, but like I said, he didn't have to get the guy a bottle of wine for the road, while taking him to jail.
No, you could tell he liked him. Yeah.
Yeah. You could tell he's one of the people he's talking about when we eventually get to Try and Catch Me, when he's up giving a speech about murder, and he says, some murderers I even liked.
Yes.
But, they all did a terrible thing, and they had to be punished for it. So anyway, one of my absolute favorite episodes. So I'm glad we got to cover it. Certainly in my top 5 and a lot of times top 2.
Okay.
briefly top one even. So I guess let's go ahead and start with our segments. When did Columbo know? So let's start with this one. When do you think Columbo knew?
How'd you know?
I suspected you 10 minutes after I met you.
I think Columbo knew Rick was murdered when he realized it rained and the car didn't have any evidence of being outside in those elements.
Right.
I think he knew Adrian murdered Rick once he realized the decanting of the wine with a steady hand.
That's
because
what I
why
was
else?
gonna say.
Yeah, like why else would Adrian be nervous? He was having a great day. He was about to win an award. You know, it was a great day. It was a Sunday. Everyone was having a great time. And later they were going to go to New York together. So
the next day.
What is there to be nervous about?
Yeah. And so I would agree with you kind of on both counts. I think he suspected, like he knew something was up when the fiance visited him and said, "Hey, my fiance is missing."
Right.
And they were a handsome couple when he saw the photo.
Yes.
And I think he really knew that this was not an accident when he confirmed that the car was left out with the top down on a day that had been raining off and on all day.
Yes.
And it was one thing to scuba dive when it's raining because you're under the surface of the water, but it's another to leave the top down on your fancy convertible and then to not have any raindrops any place, including inside the car.
Yeah.
You know, they made a point of that. You go back to that scene with the cop of him saying, "Hey, look at this carpet, look at this wood
Yes.
You know, they were really talking about how beautiful this car is.
Yeah.
And that's how we as a second watch can say, oh yeah, that car should have had a lot of rain and water spouts.
Right.
The carpet in the car should have been matted. You know, there should have been problems there that just were not. I think he knew for the same reason, because it was a great little scene when Columbo first approached Adrian and said, "Hey, you know, you let this other guy decant the wine. Why did you do that?" "Oh, did I? I don't really recall." I have a statement from him saying that. Oh, yeah, I remember. I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, quick thinking on Carsini's part, saying, well, they were going to give me a Man of the Year award. I was going to let him do the honors as, you know, a gesture of good faith or whatever. But I still think that that's when Columbo knew. I would agree.
I do too. Yeah. Okay.
So next is, will it hold up in court?
Tell me, Doctor, how do you catch a man like that?
You don't?
You're probably right.
Do you want to answer first?
I think I will,
to?
because I think it's kind of a moot point. He's got a confession that there's no reason to believe he's going to go back on. This is a man who clearly is for the love of wine, for the love of this. I would say he might even describe him as being a little on the spectrum, you know, if there was such a thing back then. And I think he got caught. He knew he got caught. Everything he lived for is gone. That vineyard is going to be toast. The wines that he's collected and spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and years collecting is gone. And I think even without the confession, I still think it holds up. I think that the wine. Now, if you want to say that it was, you know, fruit of the poison tree because Columbo stole a bottle of wine from him, that's pretty clear that couldn't really count. But does the fact that this man was then throwing tens of thousands of dollars worth of bottles of wine into the ocean not count for anything? I'm sure that Karen would flip at that point, because he said, she's going to find out at some point he'd rather go to jail than marry. So there's no question that she's going to say, okay, I saw him arrive and he never left, just like the security guard also said.
Yeah.
I think he's got him here. What do you think?
I actually agree on this one. I think even without the confession, I think he's got something on this one. I think for all the reasons that you said, honestly, I think, and Adrian is willingly confessing, period. Anyway, like you said, so it's a bit of a moot point, but I do think there was a lot more proof on this one because of the temperature of the day, of the ruined cellar of wine, which Carsini knew was ruined, and he was disposing of all of his bottles of wine. So I think this one, I think Carsini, it holds up in court.
Okay. We need somebody with less evidence to make such a firm confession in the future. That's what we need. So, all right. Well, now the sympathy meter where we rate the killer on a scale of Ruth Gordon to Dick Van Dyke being our least to most vicious killer.
Do your Dick Van Dyke impression again.
I have this dream, Francis. I'm working. There's a phone call, and he says, terribly sorry, but your wife's dead. And then I always wake up, and I want to cry, because you're still alive.
Yeah, I think I'll pass.
Please.
Our Dick Van Dyke impression.
Just Jimmy Stewart for no reason.
Okay. Well, now why did you bury him in the wine cellar? Okay.
That's pretty good. Actually, stay with that because that's pretty good.
That actually sounded somewhat like him. All right.
Like it. I like it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sympathy meter. I have a lot for you right now. Sorry, I didn't mean to make funny. Also, sympathy meter, tough one for what we always wind up talking about, right? I don't. Okay. It wasn't premeditated. It was definitely like, oh, I killed him because I was so angry. But Rick was absolutely still alive.
Yeah.
So he could have at any point, got him to the hospital and maybe Rick would have lived.
Absolutely.
It's a miserable way to kill someone because if he didn't regain consciousness, then that's the only reason I say it's not as harsh as it actually was. If he did regain consciousness, he's now tied up in a cellar in a vault and suffocating. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible way to die. And also tough because, Rick had a point. Adrian did squander his fortune. And so, what happened when their senior Carsini died, he let Rick be land rich, but that's not liquid money rich.
Correct.
And he let Adrian be liquid money rich. And so Adrian got to benefit from that money all these years, building up this vineyard. And now he's kind of squandering the riches. So what is Rick supposed to do at this point?
Yeah, because every time Rick tries to ask Adrian for money, he gets a lecture, he gets a scolding. It's like, well, but I don't have, I have this vineyard that you're running.
Yes.
I'm going
into the ground.
It.
Yeah. You're running into the ground. So if you're not going to give me any of the profits, so now my inheritance is tied up with this land. Yeah, it's dirt. So it's a tough one because I do think Adrian's endearing. I don't find him overly charming. It's not like I fell in love with the guy.
No.
But I do kind of like him. So I'm going to put it, I think I'm going to put it closer to Dick Van Dyke.
Okay.
I think I'm going to put him pretty close to Dick Van Dyke.
Oh,
Not
that's
pretty
interesting.
Close. I'm
Okay.
not going to put it pretty close. I'm going to put him closer to Dick Van Dyke than Ruth Gordon.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's fair. I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree that Rick was put in a bad spot. Really, the father kind of blew it as far as I'm concerned. The father should have left the vineyard to Adrian and just left money to Rick, unless he was afraid that Rick was just going to blow all the money and have nothing.
Which he probably would have.
Which he probably would have. Yeah. Which he would do after he sold the vineyard. He'd sell the vineyard and then still blow all that money and have, and then now nobody has anything.
Yeah.
But that was his money to blow.
Right.
That's
fair,
and it's his vineyard to sell and to blow. Adrian didn't have to take all the money that he inherited and invest it in the vineyard. He could have done anything else with that.
Yep.
And, basically he kind of blew the money, only instead of on race cars and women, he blew it on expensive bottles of vintage wine. I mean, that's paying for the best of the best of the best, getting the best employees and this and that and everything. But that vineyard was doomed. Even more than Rick or Adrian, that vineyard was doomed. There was just no way that was being, the person who loved and cared about it did not know or did not want to operate it in a way that would have kept it profitable and viable.
Right.
The one who didn't care about the wine had no money and a vineyard.
Yeah.
So this was really a problem. Maybe that was the decanting error that the father made an error long ago that resulted in a disaster later on.
I like that. Yeah.
But I would say I'm sympathetic the same way I'm going to be sympathetic in an old-fashioned murder, that the one thing that Adrian Carsini loved was going to be taken away from him for financial reasons. Yeah, he knocked him out. that part was spur of the moment crime of passion.
Absolutely.
Dragging him to a cellar to tie him up and turn off the air conditioning and air supply.
Yeah.
So that he didn't eat for 2 days, that he
That meant he survived in that cellar for 2 days.
For 2
days.
What that
means.
That's the
horrendous.
part that always gets me about this. That's the thing that's keeping me from making him more sympathetic. It's still the cause of death. Even if we assume, and I have to assume for my own sanity, that this man did not regain consciousness, because I agree with you. If he did, I think he would have gotten out. He would have just kind of found a way to get that door open, even if it was just open enough to crack it to get some air in there.
Yes.
And then he would have been found, but, so I don't think he regained consciousness, but it's still an awful way to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And not counting his fiance who was expecting to see him. I mean, there was just so much devastation from this one act. I'm going to have to put him probably right alongside with you. I'm going to say he's definitely closer to Dick Van Dyke, despite the fact that I like him more than a lot of other killers.
Yeah.
Like I like him a lot, but I still am going to put him more than halfway, past the halfway point toward Dick Van Dyke. I think we have to put him there.
I think so too.
So at this point, there's nothing more to say except, thank you for listening. Join us next time where we're going to talk about Candidate for Crime, which was another excellent episode.
One more thing.
Oh, yeah?
So we briefly mentioned the bust that was in Carcine's office.
Yes.
And I'm only mentioning it again because they did some cool 1970s editing where the bust was prominent throughout this episode in a few different places. It was in his office. It was on the wine tour. It was superimposed over the Pacific Ocean. It showed up a lot. So I looked into it. I'm like, is this supposed to be Senior Cabernet Sauvignon? I don't know. I'm like, is this a wine person? Like, who is
it's
this?
Mr. Champagne. Yeah.
Right. Is it Mr. Champagne? And no, you're right. Of course, it's supposed to be their father, the founder of Carcini Wines. And I found online that it's you can buy this prop. You can.
Get out.
It showed up in a couple of different episodes. It showed up in the Bye Bye Sky High IQ episode, so we have to look out for that.
Another good episode. I love
Yes, I love that one. It shows up in the Conspirators, which I don't love, but it is in that one.
Okay.
But when I went down this rabbit hole, it was supposed to be a bronze statue. It's actually made of wax.
Okay.
But what is a bronze statue is one of Peter Falk in Budapest. Can we talk about the Columbo statue in Budapest for a moment? Because what I didn't realize is, do you know that it's only been there since 2014?
I didn't realize it was that recent. No.
Yes. So can I just talk about this Budapest statue real quick?
We have to.
Okay. So in Hungary, there is a statue of Peter Falk as Columbo. And depending on who you talk to, no one really knows why. It was part of a revitalization project in Budapest in 2014. There's some vague references that Peter Falk may have been related to a prominent politician, but there's no proof that they both have the same last name, Falk, but there is actually no proof that they are related at all. So it's just a complete mystery why this artist decided to use Peter Falk as Columbo in the middle of this revitalization project.
Okay.
Columbo's dog is also part of the sculpture.
Yes, dog.
So his dog is also part of the sculpture. And that dog was modeled after a local Hungarian dog who showed up to the unveiling.
Oh,
which is super cute. But what really gets me is that what's rarely talked about is that slightly behind Columbo, there's a miniature bronze statue of a dead squirrel holding a pistol with a chalk outline around it. Thank you. Yes.
What?
Thank you. It's completely bizarre. So this is so layered that only Columbo could really figure this out, I think. Because why is there a statue of Peter Falk in Budapest not symbolizing anything?
Right.
Well, the show's been not remade. Peter Falk died in 2011. 2014 has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
And why is there a murdered squirrel holding a pistol with a chalk outline behind him. So really, and my answer to you is no one really has any great answers. It's all sort of speculation. So that's my one more thing. It's just a mystery of statues. I just went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on all these statues, but we definitely have to look out for the future episodes where we can see Mr. Carsini's bust.
Yeah, I would say that is absolutely something we want to keep an eye out for, because that's pretty neat. That's always neat when they have a prop that was reused, like when they reused that painting and suitable for framing that was in Prescription Murder. You know,
yes.
that's always fun.
You have to interrupt yourself because I was trying to give you the
I guess so. Yes, yeah. So
wait, okay, ready?
Thing.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
No, you talk. I'll interrupt you.
Okay. So in either case, I'm looking forward to the next episode. The next one they're showing is the politician one.
Yes, but one more thing before we talk about that.
Yes.
So the filming took place at the Mirasu Winery that was founded in 1854 by Louis Peller and his brother Pierre in what's now Silicon Valley.
Oh.
Now, the brand was purchased by Gallo in 2003.
Oh.
What's funny is the Marano brothers, that he was so upset that they were going to sell their vineyard to, is probably a thinly veiled dig at Gallo Wines.
Really? Oh, I love wine gossip. Okay, go. Yes.
So at the time, Gallo Wines was putting out very cheap commercial wines. I don't know if it was actually 69 cents a gallon, but it was very, very cheap. In fact, at the time, connoisseurs described Gallo's wine as fermented Kool-Aid.
Oh, that's so rude.
That's such a burn. That is a wine burn that you cannot get by. So it's funny that the fictional winery was sold to a fictional terrible garbage producing wine company that in real life bought this real vineyard that this episode was filmed on.
Okay.
Basically, it was kind of like, I don't know, life imitating art. I
think so, because this is first, right? This is very
this
cool.
was in the 70s, and they bought it in 2003. So this was
fun.
much earlier on. And so David Mirasu, one of the relatives of that family, is employed by Gallo just so that they can market that branch of wine as a Mirasu family product.
Okay.
And so you could buy Mirasu wine to this day, but it has nothing to do with the vineyard, it has nothing to do with the family. It's just they bought the name by hiring this guy.
And that's what Carsini said that was going to happen to Adrian. Maybe they'll employ you.
Yeah, maybe they'll employ you. So this was really, really this was just kind of crazy.
That's cool.
So the winery was not part of the Gallo purchase, but the winery was eventually sold and is now torn down for a housing development. So there is nothing like that left. Stephen Mirasu does work in Livermore Valley, California, and he is the only family member of the Mirasu family that actually owns and operates the vineyard. So he's still putting out legitimate Mirasu wine. So that was just my little one more thing, that it was kind of almost creepy how they predicted that.
I love it.
This episode. So,
I love it.
So please join us here on YouTube at Rumpled Trenchcoat of Columbo podcast. Hit like and subscribe. It does help the channel to get out there to more people who maybe would love to hear more about Columbo.
Or maybe about statues in Budapest.
Maybe about statues in Budapest. If you have an answer to that, please let us know in the comments. Just kind of because now I'm curious. I'm a little more curious about the squirrel, but now it makes sense that at least Columbo was on the scene. So if anyone can solve it, he can. But until then, in the immortal words of Orson Welles,
what Paul Masson himself said nearly a century ago is still true today. We will sell no Rumpled before it's trench coat.
Now that's someone who can do impersonations.
Is that AI? What happened?
No, it is not. No,
that's amazing.
There's a YouTuber called the Looney Tunes Critic, and I'm going to put his link in the description.
That's incredible. incredible.
He's got a fun channel where he reviews some of the classic cartoons, but he also happens to do an amazing Orson Welles impression. And so I just reached out to him, and he was kind enough to do that for us. So
Oh, thank you. That was fantastic. That was really good.
it was. It was. So I think that's funny. I've been doing such terrible impressions the whole time, and then we have this spectacular Orson Welles impression. So thank you again, the Looney Tunes critic. It was very kind of him to do that for us, and it was a fun little surprise at the end here.
That was a fun surprise, and that's another example of life imitating art.
Yes.
Or art, because I'm saying now our podcast is art, and then his was life imitating it.
Yes.
So good job.
We'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.